Folks, this is huge. Billionaire investor Ron Barron, a guy who manages about $50 billion in assets, just dropped a massive bombshell about Tesla. It is insane. We heard Ron Barron over the years being bullish on Tesla. We heard him say a lot of incredible things about Elon Musk and the company, but we have never, ever, ever heard him say this. This is a whole new territory, uncharted waters as far as I'm concerned. Now, in this video, I'm going to do the same thing I do in every single video I put out. I do not hold my audience hostage. The bottom line comes first. The video of his interview comes second. The analysis comes third. However, I urge you to stay for the analysis because last time we did this kind of video, I said that Tesla is going to go from 250 to 400 back in July, a lot quicker than people think. And since that moment, the stock went from 250 to 350. So people have made a lot of money listening to these sort of analysis videos. So I urge you to stay. But if you got to go, you got to go. That's fine. Here's the bottom line. Don't click nothing. Don't smash nothing. Don't buy nothing. The bottom line is that Ron Barron went on CNBC and he said, look, folks, Tesla is not even close to being complete yet.
Your faith in Elon Musk sounds like it's stronger than ever. Is this a stock that you would sell? Just from the perspective of if it goes up so much, it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of your portfolio.
So I think that it's right now worth $1 trillion. And what's Bitcoin? $1.7 trillion? So would I rather have 2 Teslas or 1 Bitcoin? So basically, the way I think about it is that Tesla, I think, is going to be worth $3 or $4 trillion, $5 trillion in 10 years, based upon the business plan that I'm aware of. And then Elon believes that longer term, it's going to be worth $30 trillion. It's now being worth $1 trillion.
Do you believe that?
Well, the people from Goldman Sachs were doing something for me. One of the executives in California who's being groomed, I think, to be the next CEO of Goldman Sachs, he and 3 other people from Goldman came to visit me this past summer at my house in East Hampton. And they were telling me, his name is Dan Dees, they were telling me that Elon, Goldman then was struggling to get their business value from 150 billion in the market to 180 billion. So Elon said, why don't you come to my plant in Palo Alto where I have Optimus robots? I want you to see what that is. So he says, so we go there, I take the board and we go out he says, Ron, it's dystopian, it's amazing, you gotta go see this. So I went to see it. And there's robots walking all over. And the idea that he has is that, so here we have, there wouldn't be any EVs without him, there wouldn't be any autonomous driving without him, there wouldn't be any rockets you use over and over without him, you wouldn't have any Starlink without him. So the idea is that this Optimus robots, he thinks is gonna be his biggest business ever. And he thinks that, he says everyone's gonna have robots. And my big question was when I was watching these things walking around and how intelligent they're becoming, super intelligent, I said, well, can they procreate? That's the question I have. And how is that going to happen?
But is this your way of saying, no, you're not going to sell shares of any of your companies or your investments in?
No. Just to, if they get too big, then I'll have to trim a little bit, but no. Yeah. I have no intention. I can't predict the market. I don't even try. So everyone comes in and says, what's the market going to do? I have no idea. And I don't even try. We interview analysts, and we don't even talk about stocks. We interview analysts. I want to know who they are. Yeah. I don't care about what they know. I want really smart people, and I want them to be able to be trained the way we look at things, first principles research. So just look at things, rip it apart in your head, put it back together, see if it makes sense. If you like the business and think the prospects are good, and you trust the people, then invest in it.
I have heard Ron Barron talk about Tesla a lot. He's well known. He's one of the most famous Tesla investors in the world, one of the early investors. It is his biggest position. He manages $50 billion, so what he says matters, etc., etc., etc. Once every couple of months, he gets called up to CNBC to talk about his investments, Tesla obviously being the biggest one. He talks about Tesla a lot. He's bullish a lot. All that's fine dandy. But we have never, ever, ever heard him speak like that. He basically uses the most important metric, in my view, to understand who has the best talent in the industry. And he basically says, look, folks, Tesla had 6 million applications for 30,000 jobs. And that tells you a lot about the level of quality of talent that this company is recruiting. And if you have the best talent, you're going to be unbeatable. Another thing he says is, look, the stock price is flat. If you go back all the way to November of 2021, the stock price was $400. It is currently $340. So over the past 3 years, the stock has actually lost some percentages. However, if you look at the business is getting better. So if the business is getting better, but the stock price is getting cheaper, it is a no-brainer, and I couldn't agree more. Now, I'm going to show you the numbers to prove what he's saying is absolutely on point. Over the past 3 years, in which the stock went from 400 to 340, the revenue has increased by 100%, net income has increased by 265%, debt has decreased by 10%, cash has increased by 109%, and the institutional shareholding went from 40 to 50%, and on top of it, they're basically working on creating a monopoly in full self-driving with no alternatives, no competitors, a business with 80% gross margin that's going to take over the world and generate way more revenue than you have ever seen from Tesla. Now look, let's get serious. A flat stock with a great business is a setup for explosion. In fact, the last time we have seen this was Tesla. Tesla was going great on the business side, on the fundamental side, but the stock was flat for a long time until it exploded out of the stratosphere. And all of a sudden, people were surprised. Oh my God, I wish I could have caught it in time. Here you go. You now have a second opportunity. Of course, this ain't financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy Tesla stock. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just sharing you my opinion, which might be wrong, might be inaccurate, might be the ramblings of a madman. But my opinion is that this is the second cycle in which Tesla remains flat for years, and yet the business is getting exponentially better. We haven't even said a word about the energy business that's going out of control. We haven't said a word about robotics, about robotaxi. We just mentioned FSD alone. And that in itself is probably a $3 to $4 trillion business without even saying anything about the other stuff Tesla is doing. And that's exactly what Ron Barron is saying. He says, look, folks, don't get caught up in the automotive business. The margins, this car, that car, 2024 vehicle sales is biliberda in Russian. It's bullshit. It's meaningless. This is not the future of the company. The company is a software company, not a vehicle producer. They're not going to compete with the Chinese over the next 10 years on who can make cheaper cars. They're going to generate a monopoly. And full self-driving that's going to sell at about 80% gross margin, and it's going to become an industry standard. All vehicles will have it like power windows. And the only producer of it is going to be Tesla because there's nobody else. That's going to be a huge business, way bigger than producing vehicles. And for those of you who think that Waymo can compete, Waymo cannot compete. The amount of gear you have to load up on the vehicle to use Waymo and the pre-maps and all this stuff, Tesla can do it with a few vehicle installed cameras. That's it. Every OEM would have FSD when it's going to become standard, and Tesla is the only shop in town. And yes, Ron Barron acknowledges that the stock is expensive. Obviously, you look at the forward PE and your eyes pop out of their sockets like it's the Mask movie with Jim Carrey. I get it. The stock is expensive, but all great stocks were always expensive. Always. Microsoft 10 years ago was $40. Then it doubled in price every 2 or 3 years. 40 to 80, 80 to 160, 160 to 320, now to 400. Every time it doubled, people were saying it is expensive. Great generational stocks that are market leaders double in price every few years, and then the skeptics keep shouting from the sidelines that the stock is just too expensive, missing out on all this great growth. Tesla is no different than the index. The S&P 500 is again, oh my God, it's way too expensive. So many reasons to sell. Oh yeah, it's frothy, it's overbought, whatever. The S&P 500 over the past 15 years, with all this craziness that we've seen in the world, over the past 15 years, wars, pandemics, collapses, 700%. At the end of the day, there's always going to be reasons to sell the stock. There's always going to be reasons to sell S&P 500. Ignore the short-term BS. That is what Ron Barron is saying. Focus on the future. Is Tesla the next big thing for the automotive industry, for the energy business, for the robotics business? If you think the answer is no, that they're not going to lead robotics, AI, FSD, and all this stuff, in that case, do not buy. If you think that they are, why would you not buy that kind of company for $1 trillion when you know it's going to be 3, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, like Elon says in 10 years? Why not? So the analysis isn't if Tesla is cheap or expensive as far as forward PE. The analysis is, do you think this is the next best thing to sliced bread? And if it is, then $1 trillion today, as long as you stay patient and you stay for the next 10, 15 years, it's not a huge problem. Generationally great companies will always be expensive. And Peter Lynch said this, not me. It's never a bad time to buy a good company. And Ron Barron is not the only one who's saying these things. Tom Lee just launched his own ETF. And by the way, his biggest position in that ETF is Tesla, much like Ron Barron's. And he was also on CNBC saying, look, folks, this company is still massively undervalued. Our biggest position is Tesla because the biggest amount of upside for the next 10 years is in Tesla. It's trading at $1 trillion, but it has all these massive projects, energy, robotics, FSD, robotaxi. On top of the other stuff that we haven't even talked about yet, AGI, a lot of stuff that Elon is going to roll out over the next 10 years that people just misunderstand. And on top of it, actually, Tom Lee added another layer to this Tesla analysis, which Ron Barron didn't talk about, and that is the fact that this new administration that's taking office, it's going to expedite, it's going to accelerate Tesla's ability to roll out new technologies a lot faster than would have happened under the previous administration. Now look, I've talked about all of this. Back in July, I said, look, folks, this stock is heading to 400. Whether you like it, whether you're not, it's currently at 250. You still have time. It's going to go to 400 a lot sooner than you think. And now I'm here again saying the same thing. It is not too late. The stock may be 350, but this is just the beginning. This is just the start for Tesla, and this is your opportunity to enjoy the fruits of this company. The way you do it is not to speculate, not to buy and sell, try to guess the bottom and the top, not to be a short-term speculator on the stock. Because if you look at the history of Tesla of the past few years, it has gotten very good at punishing short-term traders and excellent at rewarding long-term patient investors. Name one long-term Tesla investor that has been investing in the company for the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years and has not made an obscene amount of money. Name one. You can't. Because long-term investors that didn't give a hoot about the short-term price action of the stock were always rewarded about the stock. Why? Because the best friend of a great business, which Tesla is time in the stock market. And the worst enemy of a horrible company, again, is time in the stock market. That is why the stock market over time will expose which is shit and which is legit. And I believe that Tesla is legit. And that is the reason I've been talking about Tesla as well as other companies like Palantir since 2020. I like to invest in generationally incredible companies that are going to dominate their industry for decades to come. And it's not easy to find these other companies, but it is possible if you do the work. If you want to get better at this, if you want to be able to analyze stocks without emotions, basically just look at the stock, look at the business, make a fundamental judgment, become a great long-term investor, not a trader, join our academy on Patreon, patreon.com/Tom Nash. We have over 7,000 members. They're there because they're getting better at investing, not trading, not speculating. I don't do stock recommendations. I teach you how to build generational wealth that's going to change your life. Join us today. Try it out. 30 days money back guarantee if you're not happy with the academy. Every single time, no problem at all. I'll see you next one. Peace.